Hello, y'all at Right Hive. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. We're here to ruin your day and everybody's day absolutely by destroying the world here at the Masterclass on Writing Dystopia. Have four amazing authors to bring with you today, and I'll be your host, Sean Carroll. I'm a member of the Tomeworks Editing Collective, and basically, right now, getting you ready to interview Matt Dinniman, author of Dungeon Crawler Carl, a very fun dystopia, if anybody has a chance to check it out. First off, I do have H.M. Joinville, author of oh, I'm sorry. This is my spelling wrong. Author of the Lucky One. Hello, Heather. What are you working on these days?
Right now I'm working on querying a post-apocalyptic serial killer cult novel called Harvest, set in rural Kansas.
Yes. Combining all sorts of different dystopias together,
Oh yeah,
serial killers and the cults
it's a
and the
real
Midwest.
hodgepodge.
The Midwest is great for destroying, absolutely. Moving on from there, we have S. Morgan Burbank, author of Kotov Syndrome. Morgan, nice to see you today. I saw you on another panel recently as well. And what are you working on these days?
Well, the introduction you gave, I kind of hope this leads the entire thing so that you ruin the whole thing rather than just people's day. That said, I am working on gearing up for crowdfunding for my next dystopian novel. It is a sapphic psychological dystopia called Project Tasman about a woman stuck in a government-run psychological experiment.
Yay. Oh, leads me right to my first question about characters and plots in dystopia. Absolutely appreciate it very much. Sonido Reyes, author of To Our Untamed Core. Nice to see you.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hello. What are you working on these days?
Right now, I'm apparently in my like switching genres phase, because I started out with contemporary, but now I'm working on like a telenovela inspired drama, and then also like a Mesoamerican inspired fantasy. I'm just having a lot of fun experimenting right now.
I hope you're watching all the Almodovar films. Get your research in.
Oh, I'm
Absolutely.
definitely doing my research. I have been my whole life doing this research.
Heck yeah. Be careful, the dystopia in that will be very melodramatic, of course. Absolutely. If it comes there, you don't need to destroy the world to destroy everybody's
Just
day.
their lives.
Yes,
That's,
their
yeah.
lives. A personal dystopia.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Finally, we do have Ian Patterson, author of. Oh, I'm gonna mess this up again. My handwriting is absolutely terrible. Does this say transference?
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome, transference author, a winner of the Colorado Book Award. Nice to have you, Ian. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What are you working on these days?
I am polishing my first traditional release. It's called Fruits of Our Labor. It's out through Shiraki Press this August. It imagines a world where women can reproduce on their own and men are no longer necessary.
I mean, fodder for the Amazon mills. Like just put them all in the warehouse, or they can work in the data centers or something like that. I guess. So, absolutely. Yay. Well, as we are here to destroy the universe and also to think about how to write it, because Write Hive is a writer's conference. Don't want to just concentrate on what kind of dystopias are out there, what we love about dystopia, but also about writing dystopia. So, if I can start with Sonido, what is your favorite way to destroy the world? Throw that in there as well. What's the most enjoyable way to destroy the world that you've seen another author do?
Okay, so I kind of didn't really like pitch my book. The To Our Untamed Core is probably my favorite way to destroy the world. I guess it's the only time I've ever destroyed the world like in a book before. But it's basically like the Hunger Games, but make it Mexican. If the capital was more inspired by like the conquistadores and their um religious indoctrination and detribalization of Mesoamerica. So my favorite way to explore dystopia is really using real life things. I think are a lot of dystopia that kind of just imagines like, what if these real things that happen to like, sorry to say it, people of color all the time. What if this happened to white people? Wouldn't that be so scary? And so I, for mine, I kind of like, well, this is something that already like, that doesn't really work for me, just thinking of like, because it's already like happening. So I kind of reimagined like history. I reimagined like these events in time and created like an alternate timeline to like, what would the world look like if these, fictional conquistador inspired, Catholic inspired people came and like took this land, and it's very like religious world building, like Catholic world building, and I have a lot of fun with like creepy culty type stuff. So for me, the most fun, I mean, I guess it's not fun. It's pretty gross and
You're
awful.
writing it. It can be fun.
And I have a lot of, it stretches my creative muscles the most. I have a lot of um like I enjoy the process when I am taking things from the real world, but kind of imagining it in a different way that would ask the questions that I want people to ask and make people think about the things that I want them to think about. So yeah.
Yay.
Oh,
Heck yeah.
and then the
Please.
second part of your question of like seeing it done in a way that I really liked was, I mean, honestly, this book was inspired by The Hunger Games, so I have to say The Hunger Games, just because uh, I actually like wrote this book almost by accident. Like someone asked me once, like if you were to take like an established story and like if you were to write it, how would it be different? And I just kind of like on instinct was like The Hunger Games, but like Katniss is kind of like written as like an indigenous character. I would actually like go into that. Like she is indigenous, but my character is not Katniss. He is Demo, and yeah, so I kind of started from there, and The Hunger Games is a huge inspiration for that book. So I have to like give love to that franchise.
Yay. No, appreciate that. And definitely appreciate you bringing up one major criticism of dystopia as it's been for, let's say, 40, 50 years, which is,
Right,
oh, this already happened to marginalized people somewhere else.
right.
You're just making it about the majority or the ruling class in this case. Mexican history has at least three times complete
Yeah.
societal breakdown and
Hmm.
putting it back together. I mean, a
Yeah.
resilience
Yeah, we
inside
have to
of the
have
people.
something for it to be like dystopian. We have to have something that like it asks something new or it makes people question something new that they wouldn't already necessarily be questioning. So, yeah.
Cortez was totally looked at as an alien. What are these portals? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey. My HM, would you like to jump in on that? What's your favorite way to destroy the world, and maybe another author's favorite way?
Yeah, sure. I guess like there are multiple ways to destroy the world. There's the man created, man-made destruction. There's the divine intervention, God created destruction, and there's environmental. I would have to say personally, mine, I tend to gravitate more towards like uh like church, religious horror, divine intervention. I know with the harvest that I'm currently querying has to do with like the Book of Revelations, the OG horror novel, and the Demon Abaddon releasing locust armies into the world, and how I thought when I was reading the description of the locust creatures about how they had like the body of horses and scorpion tails and the faces of man, like what if man participated in their own destruction and created these monsters? Um, and so it kind of created a cult around that of creating a locust army IKEA style. So So, and I've also worked on other stories that are kind of religious based. My first and only NaNoWriMo win back in 2012 was a novel that ended up on the scrap heap, but it was about New Eden's preparatory school for God-fearing girls and boys, about children soldiers fighting a civil war against like a U.S.-based theocratic a holy war, which was very kind of spot on for 2012 because I had a television personality being president, destroying Roe versus Wade, EPA, Department of Education, and starting a civil war. If I were to go back and redo it now, I think that it would probably people would be like, a little on the nose, but so
When
that's
you
why
watch the news and you're like, "Oh, I didn't mean to write it into
I was like,
existence."
I'm so
You
glad
yeah.
I'm
might be a
not the only one who did
prophet.
that.
Like,
Well, it's funny is the lucky one, the one that's in the anthology, the writehive anthology. There is a description of a mural that's written about a face of a man with his hands in his head and a globe on his head, and it says the world died. And actually, and I had that actually written that in 2019, and in 2025 there was almost a very similar looking mural that showed up in France with Statue of Liberty with her head in hands.
Yes, yes.
And it was like I had somebody I commissioned somebody to do artwork for that short story in 2019. And if you compare them side by side, it's really creepy. But as far as that, I like to go with religious destruction. I'd have to say, in that same mode, the kind of conversion of religious and man-made destruction, like bringing about, because we as human beings are capable of some really messed up stuff. So I'd have to go with my girl Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. Now, love that because we have a Sonido going with it is very much religious, but at the behest of humans. I Heather going with very much it's religious, but it's supernatural.
Yeah.
And a little Terminator sprinkling in there. My Morgan, do you have a favorite way to destroy the world? And otherwise, what's your favorite author that you've seen do it in a different way?
So my favorite way is it's not explicitly like a direction. I very much when I was doing initial writing and like trying to learn how to become a writer, I was early in adulthood coming out of a very evangelical upbringing and trying to find who I was and doing that while also not having intended to be a writer in the first place. It was for therapy reasons I started writing. And I knew I loved dystopia. Like I remember reading stuff by H.G. Wells and Upton Sinclair and M.T. Anderson, and just loving the work that they did. So my thought process on writing dystopia very much became, okay, well, dystopia is very much this destruction of the world, this creating a world that is not what we see, not what we want to see. What if it was done in the dumbest way possible? And the challenge with that is that I have written a lot of things that have become true as a result because we live in the dumbest timeline. And like, for example, Kotov syndrome is a book that centers around a woman who falls in love with an artificial intelligence that becomes sentient. And it was very much written in the frame of mind back when I wrote the original draft of 2017, as in, okay, have we devolved so much as humanity? Have we devolved so much as people in our compassion that, it takes someone creating an artificial intelligence to become humanity? And I'm like, well, that's got to be the dumbest possible way for that to happen. Yet here we are.
Yeah, writing dystopia and watching it come true. We've had a couple of examples so far. So has there been any specific examples you've seen where you're like, oh no, that quote, is their
I mean,
idiocracy style?
I have artificial intelligence robot girl that is very much, being loved. I have the the original premise of part of the background of the story. I took a lot of it out, but it was originally essentially a fanatical religious uh, uprising, basically, that took over the American government and wanted to turn it into a place that dehumanizes the other, essentially. Um, for me, it's more of an
Handmaid's
allegory
Tale.
around trans folks, being trans. That said, I think you could use pretty much any non uh, cis het white group, and it would apply with very minimal effort. So,
Things that are already happening, absolutely. So we're touching on religion in so many ways. Ian, let's see if it continues on, or are you going to use giant insects, maybe?
No, I'm not.
what if the ladybug was God?
Um, I think for me, dystopian fiction works best when it's in the mode of taking an element of our world and turning it up to 11 or subverting it or throwing it into new context. And that's really, the fiction that I love to find. So like in my book, Transference, there's a new technology that allows diseases to be transferred and a whole economy gets created. And it's a big critique of capitalism, of the medical industrial complex in America, and how we continue to use people up. Um, and and I think in that mode, like books that do it really well. You took Handmaid's Tale, so I wanted to say that, but that's fantastic. And another modern book that I really love is Chain Gang All Stars, which I think is really a classic, a modern classic of dystopian fiction. Nana Kwame really had a lot to say about the penitentiary system in America, and he did a great job of bringing in um, real world facts into his story so that you could see that the dystopian wasn't the one he was imagining, but it was the one we were living. And I think that's really, it's that element of social criticism that I think works really well.
Yeah, heck yeah. My moving on from that, I love all these different ideas of, your favorite way of destroying the world, but we're talking plot wise or setup wise. I'm very much of the opinion that so many dystopias are character driven. Do you guys, when you're writing dystopia, start with character, want it to be a character-based story, or do you start with, kind of like the plot and the setup, and I want it to be plot driven in terms of the story? I don't know. Maybe Heather, am I seeing a little thought popping to mind?
I would have to say I agree that it is character driven, but I usually start with the situation or the plot because like I am the same person. Like I am me, but like it depends entirely on the situation which me you're gonna get. Like take for the sake, take childbirth for example. Even though like my day to day I'm still the same, I have different capabilities and pain thresholds. I am the person that gave birth naturally is not the same person that steps on a leftover reindeer figurine at the end of a long day. Those are two completely different people. So I think like the different situations brings out different aspects of your personality and forces you to act differently. So I usually start with like a situation, a social critique, a area that I want to focus on, and then I drop a character into it, and I create the character, and I go, okay, now how does this character react to the situation, the surroundings, and the environment?
Oh, that's so terribly interesting because using contemporary characters or ideas of people today, just put them in a different spot so you can see how, and as you described, like having children and the different modes and different things that you're going through can cause you to go to extremes. Absolutely. Very interesting. Heck yeah. Ian, did you have any thoughts on
Yeah,
character versus plots?
this is actually one of my favorite questions. And the reason is I think that, there's actually a third mode that we really don't talk about anymore. And that I consider myself more of a writer from theme than from either character or plot. And
Vibes.
yeah, message. Like, I think this is really crucial for dystopian fiction because it comes from this long history of protest art. We're talking cultural critique, social commentary, satire, all those things really blend together. And so to me, it needs to have this really strong central message that needs to be reiterated in plot, in character, in fashion, in everything, to really drive the point home. And I think without that, it kind of loses the reason to exist. It's kind of just like cosplay. Um, and so yeah, I think approaching it from theme is my main mode.
Yay, appreciate that. Sonido, thoughts on character versus plot driven in terms of dystopia?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you so far. I think I tend to mo all of my books are very character driven books, but they still have like a plot that matters. Especially this one. This is the most plot driven book I've ever written, just because like there's there are events that like need to happen for the story to move forward. Um, but I think I did start out knowing that the main character was at the very least going to be someone who was still brainwashed, and who was still very, very much indoctrinated and fully believed the teachings of the those in power. Because I wanted to tell a story of someone who can deconstruct that and figure out the truth. Um, so in that sense, I did kind of start with a piece of a character. The and he's one of the main characters. He's like probably the main character. There are other like point of view characters throughout the book, uh, who all came much later. But I definitely knew from the beginning that I wanted to have a character who was indoctrinated, um, because I felt like and then it's hard too because it's like, and it's a careful dance because you don't want people to read it and think like, oh, this author is signing off on these beliefs, right? But it is definitely like I'm not. This character has to grow a lot. Um, so yeah, I did know kind of from the beginning that it was going to be that type of story and it was going to be about deconstructing and learning more about yourself. I knew that it was going to be a story of like detribalization and religious indoctrination because they go hand in hand. And so in the deconstructing of this, fictional religion, he has to kind of like figure out what type of people his ancestors were because there is a lot of propaganda around it. Um, so yeah, I guess kind of both, but I am very character heavy. So yeah,
And unearthing the past, absolutely.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
mystery to it. Heck yeah.
yeah.
Morgan, do you have thoughts on well, a new challenger has entered. Do you start with a character, with plot, or with theme? Absolutely.
I very much start with character, and it is not because like I think that a dystopia needs to be character driven. It's because of the fact that I a lot of my original writing was short stories. That was what fit my brain to do, the writing work that I did, way back when. And what that has allowed me to do is to better understand what happens to a character and how they react, usually in mundane situations, in those short stories. But it lets me figure out, okay, well, I have this idea of this is a basic framework of a larger story I want. Does this character work in it? And like that's something that I think has allowed me to be able to put my work in a little bit different framework that I think I would have traditionally looked at it. Because like there's characters that I've written in short stories and they go right into things. Like one of the main side characters in Kotov Syndrome's sequel, Woodpusher, like was written explicitly for that, and it was because I knew that like this idea of this character that I hadn't written was just like, she fits as this medic type character who also is techie and builds her own bows and all these things. But then there's other characters, like there's a character I originally had written for this more like contemporary dystopia. I scrapped it because like the story didn't work in my mind, but like I still have notes on this character, and I first wrote the story for her in 2011. So it's been 15 years, and I've been trying to find somewhere to put her since because the character is fascinating. Um, and I think that that's part of why I don't get as depressed as I probably should writing dystopias, because I am enjoying the characters I am creating, even if everything I am putting them in feels very stupid.
Yeah, the destruction of the world by idiots. Absolutely. Heck yeah. So moving on from there, I like the couple of things that have come up in these last answers, but I think that this is going to bring me now to the idea of a lot of dystopias and your POV character or main POV character. It's a type who wants to change the world. Do you enjoy having a protagonist like this? Or if not, what does your protagonist tend to be? If I can ask Ian, perhaps.
Right first. I would say my first two books had protagonists like that, and they're pretty fun to write. It's a very like classic trope, and it's a lot of I think fun for a writer and a reader. But I've really been steering more towards people that are like more interested in saving their own skin, or people that realize like, hey, I want to change the world, but I actually need a community of people to do that. Because I think that speaks more to, if we do want to change the world, what's actually required.
Hey, you're bringing up to me, Catherine Valenti, as well as, what am I thinking? The Road, Cormac
For
McCarthy.
sure.
Yeah, and characters who are just trying to survive, for
Yeah.
sure. Heather, do you have thoughts on changing the world, as in terms of writing a dystopia?
Yeah, I don't really I don't really necessarily like characters who think that they're going to go change the world. They have like that God superhero complex, and it's just not really relatable. I kind of like the trope of like the reluctant hero, like the the Jane Doe who all she wants to do is make sourdough and be left the F alone, you know. Or the introverted old lady who's got like the wisdom of the old world and like a dark sense of humor and a drinking problem, but like somehow she holds the keys to saving humanity. Like those are the characters that I find, fascinating. Just like the everyday person who's thrown into a role that they didn't necessarily choose and now must save us all.
Heck yeah. My Sonido as well as your character fitting into the, as you mentioned, discovering the past, trying to find out where they came from, someone who wants to change the world or someone who is more reluctant, more going along for the ride and just trying to survive.
Yeah, I think definitely reluctant. I mean, he's not trying to change the world and he's not even trying to survive. He's trying to save some specific people who he cares about. And in the process of that, ends up being a very pivotal component to everything toppling. Um, and so yeah, I really enjoy stuff like that and also like the reluctant hero and everything. But like I said, there's multiple POV characters in this book. There is one character who does want to make a difference. His whole thing is like he wants uh to make change, right? He's like a rebel. And one of the things that I find really fascinating in the framing of a lot of hero characters who want to change the world is that they're seen as like naive and they're seen as like almost like stupid, right? But I find them so much more fascinating when they're smart because we think of evil people as stupid a lot. And I think it takes so much more courage to be smart and want to change the world and save the world because like because it's like with the animal kingdom, right? Like the smarter they are, the more capacity for evil, the scarier they can be. Um but then I was thinking about this recently, like elephants, right? They're so smart, but they're also not evil. Like they can be vengeful, but it's always earned, right? So I want my characters who want to, save the world, I want them all to be like elephant type morality. Like they're smart, but they're like not, like they can be vengeful and they can be spiteful and they can like, you know, mess you up, but they're not naive about it. Like they're not trying to do this out of this like naive sense of like morality where they're just like, oh, I just want everyone to be happy. Like, no, it's like they know the evil of the world and they still have hope that it can be better. I like the subgenre of like dystopian. I feel like that's something I really gravitate towards is when there's like hope as resistance to this awful world. Yeah.
Yes, Alma, you're reminding me as well of hippos. Hippos have being one of the most vicious and vengeful of all in the animal kingdom for
They do have really
sure.
good PR though. I feel like there's some animals that have really good PR, but they're actually like awful.
Yeah, like most
Hippos
deadly, but also
have good
cute and
PR.
cuddly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Dolphins too, they have good PR. Yeah.
Morgan, I'll ask the question about if you'd like it to be a character who wants to change the world, and then I'll wrap it to another question as well.
Dolphins do not deserve the PR they have. I will lead with that. Second of all, the two kinds of characters I write purely from a standpoint of, like the protagonist have already kind of been discussed. So Nina brought up the first one, and that is, it's more in the archetype of what I've got in Project Tasman with Alana, where she is very much this, she's reluctant, she doesn't want to be there, in that there was never the intent to be there, but she very much wants to save her people, and due to the circumstances of it, it's challenging to do that, but like that's very much that archetype is I think it fits more naturally into dystopia, but I don't know that it's necessarily the more fun one to write. The more fun one, Heather brought up, and that is the idea of this, I'm not just reluctant, I am mad that I am in this situation. And that's very much Erica in Kotov Syndrome and Woodpusher and Sequels of Becoming That. Like, when I pitch Kotov Syndrome and that whole series at live events, I describe it as, an android who is in love with the human, and that human is a dumpster fire alcoholic. Because that is accurate. That is what she is. She, yes, she wants to be at home with her girlfriend and not doing things, but she is actively harmful to everyone who is trying to save the world. And yet she is integral to how the world will be saved. And I think that is a fascinating take, because it's not just that she doesn't want to be there, it's that she's so actively bad that she has harmed multiple times people trying to do the things they need to do to save the world, just because, no, you should not be here. You are bad at your call center job, never mind literally anything else that involves weapons. There's a scene where everyone in the book is getting magical weapons that have these awesome powers and whatnot, and the armorer hands her this butterfly knife and these brass knuckles, and she's like, what magical powers do these have? She's like, none, you would kill yourself with them.
Oh, it's a shades of idiocracy, as we've already spoken of, and it reminds me as well of Allison Stein and Trashlands, which is very good dystopia about a fallen Ohio. It's not too far off from today, absolutely.
So regular Ohio, as an Ohioan.
Morgan as well. So, in terms of dystopia, for the centuries that has existed, especially early at the beginning, but you can find shades in every single one. Dystopia is often tied up with utopia. Do you find utopian ideals as you're writing about dystopia, as well as the idea of a dystopia makes things easier to understand, or let's say motivations clearer? And is that kind of a utopian ideal that, you find in your writing about this kind of thing versus the mishmash of what we're trying to figure out, in our own lives?
I always looked at dystopia and utopia as not necessarily explicitly two sides of the same coin, though they can be that, but as inherently necessary to understand each other within the same book. Because for it to be a dystopia, someone in the world of your story that you have written has to view that dystopia as a utopia and have power. Because otherwise, the people who have power also don't like the structure. They would shift that structure in some capacity. Now, you can get into the argument of, well, does the group that thinks they have power actually have power? And like, all important, not relevant to this situation though, because of the sense that like they very much are counteractive, counterproductive to one another. And I think that this is why you have books that very much are framed as utopian societies that are more unsettling than most dystopias. Because people are looking at this and like, look at this wonderful world that we live in under his eye, all these things. And like, it's just terrifying when you break it down beyond surface level in any capacity. And so I think they relate in that way.
Heck yeah. Gulliver's Travels, Logan's Run. Is it a utopia? Is it a dystopia? Absolutely. Who wants to jump in on this? Sonido, do you have thoughts? I see a smile.
Well, Morgan, you basically said everything I was gonna say.
My
But
apologies.
no, I mean it's great. I think just to kind of like bounce off of that a little bit, I think there's no utopia unless everyone feels it's a utopia. And that's what makes it a dystopia is that it is just like those at the top that are like, this is the perfect world and this benefits me and this is my perfect life, those in power. But then in order for that to happen, so many people have to be exploited. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Excuse me. But yeah, you basically said everything I was gonna say, so I got nothing.
Well, do you have a reference? Do you have a favorite, like it seems like a utopia?
I guess like The Giver is the first one that comes to my
That's the one
head.
I couldn't think of. Thank you.
Yeah, just as like it but yeah, I totally agree with that like most utopia or things that like would on the surface look like a utopia is like very unsettling because we know it's like, oh, there's something wrong here. Something's not right. Um, because I think like at our core we all like want to feel things and we want to be human, even if it is painful sometimes. So I think a lot of the utopian the way that a lot of books go about making a utopia is taking away feeling so that there's no pain, right? There's no suffering, but then that also means there's like no joy and there's no celebrating and it takes away also the best parts about being human. And I think a true utopia doesn't necessarily mean that there's no suffering at all. I think it just means that the suffering doesn't come from the societal structure and the suffering doesn't come from those in power exploiting those who aren't. But we're all going to go through breakups and we're all going to have, we're all going to grieve and we're going to suffer. Like that's a human experience, but it's also like it comes with, joy and celebration. And I think they have to go together.
Someone could rewrite 1984 as a soma addict, just totally blissed out on everything and then enjoying their job in the cog factory and not worrying about, like love and freedom and knowledge. Absolutely. Heather, do you have thoughts as well? Utopia,
Yeah.
where does it fit?
Yeah. It's funny that Sunita was talking about kind of the idea of like a perfect society and how it's only perfect for certain people. It's not perfect for everybody. And I'm actually just currently reading an arc by an author, Mary G. Thompson, called Precious Children, that's basically set in like a future where the rich can make numerous thousands of copies, clones of their children, and raise them as children. And what children basically are backup copies. So their children that they've chosen never die. They can just transfer their consciousness over to a backup. And all the backups basically become workforce because in this society you can't make children anymore, or the natural children are dying at a faster rate because of disease. So it's basically a lot of humans as commodities, a utopia for, in theory, for this upper class of rich elites who are pretty much hopped up on stims, so they don't feel anything. They don't know what's going on around them, and they're trying to avoid the pain of losing a child, and avoid basically death. I think that yeah, that is huge in dystopia, is this avoidance of the very thing that makes us human.
That life extension comes up so often in terms of making a good idea gone terribly wrong. Ian, thoughts on utopia and how it plays into dystopia?
Yeah, I think big agree with everything so far. And I'd also say, one of my hallmark examples of this is The Dispossessed by Le Guin, which she called an ambiguous utopia. And I think it's such an interesting framing because she seems to acknowledge that even in this idealistic utopian society, there are trade-offs or sacrifices. Not everything is ideal. And contrasting that with a more dystopian society, it's a really great book. A big shining light for me for sure. But I recently went through an exercise as a writer for one of my work in progresses called The Cog That Spins the Wheel, of actually imagining what utopia is for me, and going through like what are the philosophical cornerstones of that? What do we build upon that? And I think it's a really crucial exercise to be able to build a North Star for yourself when you're writing these things, to be able to say like, what like logically cohesive thing do I actually think would be better than the present state? So I really do think that they're integrally combined. Like you can't talk about what's bad without, talking about how it could be better.
Yay, heck yeah. I appreciate y'all's answers. Absolutely. And we're getting to the idea of, would you rather write about during the fall, a dystopia coming into being, or after the fall and people picking up the pieces? Now, of course, y'all all have novels that involve this, so it could just be, oh, I wrote about that. But in that case, please tell us why. Absolutely. Heather, do you have thoughts?
Yes, I do. As soon as I get the audio working, I tend to, because I gravitate toward horror writing. I tend to go with the destruction. It's messier, it's more fun. I'll leave the hope for another writer. Um, plus, I have ADHD, general anxiety disorder, and a panic disorder. My thoughts are 95% due planning the apocalypse. So so it's more, I guess, more in my wheelhouse.
And you're the hopeful one. You're the one who's like, okay, let's have kids, let's move on into the future, planning for things. I love that.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
have like 10 billion plan A's and B's and
Yes. Morgan, do you have thoughts on writing during the apocalypse, post-apocalypse?
So I've written both at this point, and I think that I enjoy both for different reasons. Like if I had to pick one, I lean more towards writing during the apocalypse rather than the lead up to it or the rebuild afterwards. The lead up to it is depressing, objectively, in most cases, and the rebuild after is something that I am not an expert in, and I would like to trust people with, actual science backgrounds and ethics backgrounds and whatnot to rebuild society in a way that isn't douchey. But also, writing during, I think, gives you greater structure in terms of the limitations you can put on your characters. Like in Project Tasman, like without getting too spoilery since it's not out yet, like part of the restriction around it is that for 95% of the book, everyone involved is in a singular building. Um, and most of them are within a singular room. That it gives that limitation not because the world around isn't shit, but because the world around being in a bad place is A, irrelevant to the current circumstances, but B, the cause of those circumstances. And I think that that makes for a more interesting dissection. Now, does that potentially allow me to create broader scope things in the future that say, okay, well, this world where all this took place and here's the broader world that's in? Yes, but that, as much as I could write that, potentially profit off of that, that's not my area of expertise. And I think I would do a bad job at that. And I don't want to do a bad job at my writing. That's the whole thing. If I wanted to do a bad job, I would go use AI, and I hate AI.
We're in the midst of our own apocalypse, absolutely. Ian, in terms of writing the apocalypse, writing the post.
It's really tough to choose here. I've done both. And I think writing during the apocalypse can offer more social criticism to today, which is a lot of fun to explore. But then, like my forthcoming title, Fruits of Our Labor, I'm really writing a hope punk story about the future, about like the patriarchy coming down and real gender equality and things like that. And honestly, that was super cathartic for me to write. It was a big critique of far-right gender politics that are happening today. And um, I don't know. I think both modes can be very successful. And it really just depends on what you're trying to say.
Hey. Sonido, I'm going to assume, hearing from your book, that you are a writing during the apocalypse.
Um, yeah, I mean, I have interest in both, but I think it really for me just depends on like what's the theme that I want or the question I want people to ask, like what is the vibe of the story? Uh, because in this story, it was very much like this is we're in the thick of things, but it is like way after like this would have started. So this is like I call it like salvation, right? So salvation happened 600 years ago, and now they're here, but they still are like in it. Um, so I don't know. I have a lot of ideas where it could be like, in that beginning, like that could be a book, right? The actual uh event of, the colonizers coming and the fights that like happen there. That could be a book. But then there could also be a book of like I intentionally wrote this as a standalone because I didn't really want to write a whole taking down the government book because I feel like that happens a lot and no shade to that. I think those are great. I don't feel like writing that in a whole having a whole book about taking down the government. So like I kind of like no spoilers or anything. Like I think I have a hopeful I try to keep hope alive throughout the story, right? But um I do think that could also be a book. It's like, picking up the pieces afterwards, like after it's all been taken down or um and I think they're all like there's no wrong answer. Like they can all be like the perfect story. It just depends on like what you want your reader to get out of it. Like if you want them to be like, on the edge of their seat and like super like in suspense, or if you want them to be like questioning like the world and you want them to be like contemplative or like whatever the vibe is that you want your reader to get out of it. I think that's where the decision kind of comes from. Um, yeah.
Yay. No, I appreciate that very much. Heck yeah. As a climate fiction writer myself, I am often writing about the ways that, like the world is coming. Human societies have to react to things that are happening around us that are out of our control. On the vibe of, gods coming down with the magical items for sure, to destroy us all. But, of today, I wonder, hearing all four of y'all's different perspectives on what kind of dystopia you like to write, what kind of world destruction you like to write. Over the years, this has changed very often. Is it aliens? Is it nuclear destruction? Is it disease? Is it idiots for sure? And as these dystopias have explored our contemporary fears for sure, do you have a favorite historical era of dystopian literature? And what do you possibly think the next one in our future will be? Absolutely.
I can go
Is that a long
first.
question? Please, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think the next one is happening like right now, starting now. It's like we're coming up into another dystopian wave. I think it's been the last one was probably Hunger Games era. And maybe it's just because that was the one that I was like really coming into like myself as a reader at that time. That was my favorite. I experienced it in real time. So but yeah, I fully think we are on the brink of another dystopian peak. There's a lot of like dystopian book deals getting announced, so much more than before. Like dystopian was like they always said in traditional publishing for the longest time, it was like dystopian is dead. Like you can't even try to sell a dystopian. Like that would just be like the rejection. Dystopian is dead. And it's
During
not.
COVID,
It's
when they said,
even
"Don't
before
send
that,
us your
yeah.
COVID novels,"
Right, right,
yeah.
right. And now look at oh, what's it called? There's that COVID book that blew up. Ah, what was it called? It was uh is it called like Bat Eater or something? Let me find it because I feel like that's yeah, Bat
Rem-
Eater.
Yeah.
Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Jung. And it's by Kylie Lee Baker. That was a COVID book and it was so like yeah, anyways, so highly recommend. Anyways, off topic. But yeah, it's like whenever they say something is dead, whenever they say like you can't do something, there's like a window of like when that's gonna be over. And I think it's over now. I think we're back. I think we're so back. And I forgot the first part of your question because I was so excited to say
Oh,
we're
it's all good
back.
historically, and I'm gonna say Hunger Games is your answer if I'm not
Yeah. Oh
wrong.
yeah,
That's your favorite
yeah, yeah.
era
I think
of,
so.
yeah, dystopian,
Yeah.
absolutely. Ian, do you have thoughts on that as well?
I think my favorite era is really maybe a little bit more classic. So like the 1984's The Lord of the Flies. I guess that's like what I bit my teeth on and grew up reading. Even Handmaid's Tale, Ursula Le Guin, like all that's really from the same um, period. And I really love all of those books, but I also agree with Sunita. Like, I think we are in another period of this. And to touch on something else you asked, I think one of the big things fueling it is not only do we have writers that are bringing a strong message, but they're also bringing really strong characters. So these books are like enjoyable at the same time as saying something, and that's making a much more profound impact than previous dystopian novels.
Yeah, heck yeah. Morgan, you want to pop in on that question?
So, I weirdly enough, for as much as I love classic dystopia, there is a part of me that really loves when dystopia is wrapped up in something else, whether that be a spy movie, whether that be satire, whatever it may be. And I enjoy that concept of, you are telling a story, you are very clearly telling a dystopian story, but doing it in a way that catches people off guard. And, you know, while I don't directly try to write that, I try to work that into my things. And I think that you're going to start seeing that more for the reasons Sonido said. He said that there's this idea of, you know, the dystopian story coming back into vogue. And I think the reason for that is because you're probably going to see a number of dystopian novels start leaning more into the tech side of dystopia, right or wrong. I think that's a very real possibility. Somebody's going to actually write the Torment Nexus, and I'm going to laugh. But That's my prediction. Could I be wrong? Probably. But that's my thought.
Heck yeah. Heather, what are your contemporary fears bubbling up right now? And historically, what do you prefer as far as dystopian eras?
Preference, I think that I agree with Ian. I kind of tend to go for the Last Babylon, the Brave New World, the Handmaid's Tale. And actually, this is actually an interesting. I was thinking about this, an interesting topic for me because on my day job, I'm actually a historical researcher. So I create primary source databases for libraries and universities, and I also contribute to a history blog, which I will drop a link for. Uh, and one of the things where I'm creating multiple databases following niche historical groups like Hispanic life in America, Black life in America, labor movements in America, you kind of see a pattern forming over and over again. And when you look at like Margaret Atwood. She did a lot of people saying The Handmaid's Tale feels so relevant right now. And it's very spot on. And was she a psychic? No, she was actually writing from the what she was seeing at that time. When she wrote it, she was thinking about the Iranian Revolution. She was thinking there was a decree in what was it?
There was the
Romania,
Reagan era.
Romanian
There was
decree.
the
Yes, where it was
moral
having every women,
majority.
yeah, every woman was supposed to have like four children, take monthly tests, and she was pairing that with historical patterns that she'd seen in the past from Nazi Germany to Puritanism in America, and she was gaming that out basically. I mean, pretty much what dystopian writing is gaming out our current situations with an historical template that's already been created. It's kind of like what Mark Twain says, like history doesn't always repeat or doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So it's definitely interesting kind of seeing that play out in dystopian writing. And I also thought about they say that horror writing has a huge uptake when there's social unrest.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing with dystopian when there's a feeling of social unrest in society. I think dystopian and horror kind of both escalate in the hunger for reading. As far as the future concerns, I agree that I think dystopian, a lot of dystopian in the future is going to be based on what we're experiencing now. It's going to be like pandemic based. It's going to be about possibly sex trafficking, weaponized mediocrity.
And AI. Oh man, it's already been done. It had its Terminator era and stuff like that, but the AI dystopias, they're on the way. So, in terms of fighting back against dystopia, Heather, let me start with you because you've expressed a touch of this and I'm waiting for your answer. Are you a prepper or do you prepare for the end of the world in a little bit because of what you're writing?
I do have I mean I my Facebook algorithm is trying to get me to buy walkie-talkies that have long range and also like freeze-dried food. Um I do have a supply of canned goods and just emergency pack because I grew up in Illinois, which is a lot of tornadoes. So I do have that. And my husband bought me 2 Christmases ago the book. And I don't know if you know what the book is. It's the book. It's like this big. It's like huge, and it has the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization. So it has everything from how to like brew your own beer to like making penicillin. So I'm good. And I've also spent like the last 3 years getting a backup secondary passport from another country. So yes, I do kind of think these things through.
Yes. Anyone else who does that? Ian, you immediately, yeah,
Oh man,
off
I
that
I
mute.
just think it's really funny. I'm not a prepper. Although, I think there's never been another time in my life where I felt more of a push to do so than right now. And I did some reading on this a few months back. It's really a distinctly American hobby, this like preparing for the apocalypse, even though we live in what is largely a pretty safe society. And it's this like focus on individualism, where I just think it's so interesting where if we invested that in community, instead, we might actually be better prepared for disasters when they struck. So no, I'm not a prepper, although I do have a backup passport on the way, so maybe I need to change my answer.
I do love the idea of our other societies, like they're looking at the apocalypse, but they're like, don't worry, we all get along. And in America, it's like, wait a minute, I don't trust my neighbor.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else a bit of a prepper or want to stake their claim to no, I am not a prepper, Morgan?
I am not, and it's not because I don't think there's value in that. Like, I would love a copy of the book. I know exactly what others talking about. I want it just because it's a cool book. And well, cool book. But if society were to falter, my concern is not about whether the canned goods, the battery backup, the etc. I have is enough to sustain me for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. My concern is that if we are not doing that in mass as a society, there's going to be a problem because your water infrastructure is going to be broken. Your telecommunications infrastructure is going to be broken. Your electrical infrastructure is going to be broken. The people who are prepping are going to be the ones whose stuff gets taken first. So, no. And I know my constitution is weak without giving a target on my back.
Understood. You're like, I'm not going to survive anyway. I'll just keep writing. I'll just keep writing. Absolutely.
Amazing.
And Sonido, do you look to the future, look to the prepper style at all?
I used to be a prepper when I was younger. So I have OCD and schizoaffective disorder, which is like schizophrenia and bipolar for me. So there was a lot of paranoia. There was a lot of like I fully believed that the zombie outbreak would happen any moment.
Another
Um,
great era of
yeah,
dystopia.
so good. I do love zombie fiction. Fiction. But I used to like anytime I was in a public space, I would like scope it out and be like, what could I use as a weapon if a zombie came at me right now? Where could I run out of here? Where could I, like that was the type of like prepping, I guess, that was what I was prepared for. I was never prepared for like the food stuff or like it was always like, what in this immediate moment, like how can I fight a zombie? But I totally agree with everyone on that, like, in that after the immediate crisis is over, like we as a society are not going to survive unless we have like infrastructure, unless we like have community. Um, and I think like for me, like now that I'm disabled, like physically, like I'm not, I can't fight a zombie anymore. So I really do think like the only way I'm surviving the immediate crisis, like I feel like I'll be like the town bard. Like I could entertain. I'll do poetry, I'll, sing or whatever. That's how I'll get through it. People always want entertainment and art, so I will do that. But yeah, I do think that the real value lies in community and we're not going to survive with just canned goods. Like we have to have people who can make clothing, people who can, like who like there's so many different aspects of it. Like people who will do childcare, like people who will, like it's a whole community effort. It's not just like one person because if it's just one person, they can, survive however long they survive, but that's not a society. Um, so yeah, but I volunteer to be the bard. That's the role I think I could do well. I'll do
Lovely. Heck
it.
yeah.
I
No,
love that.
the society needs to rebuild. All
Yeah.
those jobs need to be filled again.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time, and I do want to ask a fun one because dystopia has a fashion to it. It really does. And you can see the water worlds out there, the Mad Maxes that exist. And what is your ultimate end of the world, post end of the world outfit? Is the question I want to ask. Sunito, you're right there. Do you have thoughts coming to mind?
I mean, I feel like it's okay. I'm of two minds. I'm like, one, if it's the end of the world, do I
It can be from your
care?
book too,
From
absolutely.
my book, okay, so not in like real life. Because it's
Either
like, how
way,
would I dress for the
it's
end
both.
of
It's
the
both.
world? I mean, uh, in my book. there's kind of like there's the people who are in the tournament and they're basically in prison scrubs, except for the main character because he snuck in, so he's got a tank top and some shorts with a heart patched into him. Um, and but then there's like it's called El Centro, which is like basically like the capital if we're comparing to Hunger Games. Um, and they've got like I think they're like the like they're kind of like the cops are more like you would call instead of calling them like officer, you call them father. Like it's very like Catholic coded, and they've got kind of like what I picture to be it gives cop, but it also gives priest their outfits. Like they've got holy garb, but also like breastplates and armor and stuff. So I don't know, like that is like an outfit, I guess. Not a good one. But in real life,
It's giving Crusader,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Basically, that's the vibes. In real life, I think I would want to get one of those canes that ha you can pull a sword out of it.
Yes.
Because I do walk with a cane, and I just think it'd be pretty gnarly to have a sword in there or something, or like you could maybe like break it into batons and fight
Nunchucks,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, something like that. But also stylish cane to match my outfit. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, you'll have a set of canes. Are you wearing green
That's
today?
the goal is
Absolutely.
like one day because I do have it's not here right now, but I have two canes. One is my everyday cane and it's very much like a wizard cane. Like it's like blue and black and gold and it's got like this it's like hand carved, hand painted. I got it from Etsy. Um and it makes me feel like a wizard. I always get compliments on it. And then I have my special occasion cane, which is like red and gold and it's got like a gem on top and it's like very like for like special occasion like if I'm going to a wedding I'll use that cane. But yeah.
Yay. Yeah.
So my goal would be one day to have one for like every outfit. Like every color scheme has a cane with it. When I'm like, so rich. Well, I guess you don't have to be that rich to buy a bunch of canes, but it's not high on the priority list right
Not
now.
high on the priority list. No. We've
Yes.
gone high fashion a bit, for the dystopia. Who has a different mode of looking at that? Heather, what do you think about what's your ultimate end of the world outfit?
Well, first of all, everybody is getting some great fitting N95 masks. Just wear the freaking masks. Because at the end of times, even if it's not pandemic related, widespread disease,
Hmm.
poor water, poor, sanitation, just wear the masks.
Right.
But I would make them prettier. Like they would be much
Bedazzle
pretty.
that sucker.
Exactly. Maybe
Absolutely.
some like anti-facial recognition capabilities to avoid mass surveillance. And obviously sweatpants because most of the time when you're in a dystopian surviving for your life, you don't have time for costume changes. So just like the most comfortable and versatile thing you could think of, like sweatpants, but with like cargo short, like is that a thing? Can I get sweatpants with like cargo short pockets?
If it once it's out on the internet, somebody's gonna make it. Absolutely. I love it. All right. Morgan, do you have thoughts on what the end of the world outfit is?
I have a follow-up question for Sonido.
Please.
You mentioned your dress cane. Do you refer to it as your special occasion?
And now I will. Yeah, that's now the term.
This is the danger you get if you have me on a panel, Sean.
And no, I am obsessed with like any pun. And now I feel like I have to use that. Yes, thank you.
Just name each one as you go. Absolutely.
Every cane can have a name. Yes.
Good. In terms of what the dystopian folks would wear, I would like to, like, mentally, my gut instinct is to be like, well, in an ideal world, you just wear what you want because the world is ending anyway, and we have turned off, societal thoughts as to whether or not, what you are dressed in is practical, blah, blah, blah. But at the same point in time, like, depending on the type of dystopia that you are in, um, that may not necessarily matter because, like, Sean, you do climate change stories. Ohio's climate is known for being all four seasons in one day, but with enough climate change, it's probably going to get more less temperate, more tropical, for lack of a better way to put it. And I know it's not literally necessarily that, but the principle. And something tells me that even if I wanted to wear a nice puffy coat for style purposes, it may not be the most useful. That I think it's what is the most practical, not necessarily what is the most pretty.
Yay, absolutely. Ian, are we going to go with practical for the apocalypse as well?
Absolutely not. Um, I really love when into the world stuff, fashion comments on the central thesis of the book, or so it like plays part and parcel with that. And I think like a great area here is like Hunger Games, the class stratification at the Capitol balls is so cool. And also look at the Met Gala because it's the same stuff. Um, and so into the world, I love things that color-coded uniforms, so what branch of society people are in, or crazy, insane artistic dresses, because why not? I write with a good deal of surrealism and satire, so I actually have a lot of tuxedos because I think it's funny that someone would wear a tuxedo at the end of the world because it's completely irrational. So yeah, that would be, I guess I'm wearing a tuxedo then.
Not gonna lie,
Love
I
it.
love that.
Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for talking to me about dystopia. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this masterclass in dystopian literature. We've referenced a lot of the past, talked about where the future is going, talked about authors going through writing dystopia, reasons why, methods to do so. Does anybody have any last thoughts on the topic? Anything you'd like to bring to an emerging writer who's considering writing dystopia?
Um,
Please, Heather.
I think one of the big things about writing dystopian is being a very big connoisseur of history. Like I said, the history repeats itself. There's lots of templates. If you're wondering, you're looking at something contemporary and you're wondering, I wonder where this is going. All you have to do is look to the past to see, where we've been with it. So just devour history, research. Yeah.
Yay.
Um, to add on to that, I think also like devouring history through with the question of like who told the story and whose story wasn't told, especially with dystopian. I feel like most dystopians are told from the perspective of those who like wouldn't historically be the ones telling the stories. Um, so yeah, I think as like looking at history through like an almost like anti-colonial lens and kind of like, okay, well, what does this actually mean, right? Like if you look at like the letters that like Cortés wrote to the king before he like colonized, Mesoamerica, like I read those letters and I can see why people thought that he thought that the indigenous people worshipped him as a god, but I could also see how that just means that they thought he smelled bad because they were giving him flowers and incense and bathing him and his men so it's like and so kind of like read between the lines when you're doing your research.
Love that so much as well because when you have the MAGA folks going, we need to go back to our utopia, the 1950s. You look at anybody who isn't white cis man and you're like, that's a dystopia. Why are you trying to go back there? Anyone else have thoughts on that? So what would you like to say to a emerging writer? Yeah.
Yeah, this was actually a thought experiment from a podcast I love, Writing Excuses, that got me started on my
Yes.
debut. And it was to tweak one thing about the world as it exists today, and then follow that through to kind of the logical conclusions. And I think that that's a really good, way to start writing dystopian fiction because it makes you inquisitive about the way the world works today. And to follow through, like, how does that impact marginalized groups? Yeah.
Yay. Thank you. And Morgan, we got to your answer on that, or should I?
Um, I mean, I don't think I have anything that hasn't already been said. I'm a big proponent of use history and use context clues in history. So I'm just going to say add more gays and theys to your stories.
There you go. Absolutely. Love it, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us here at Right Hive. Oh my, everybody should be in the chat. We'll see if we can all make it for sure. And I hope you guys are enjoying the conference this July, and that the weather is beautiful where you are, and that there are no hurricanes. I'm sitting here in Houston saying that and projecting to the future that we're not in the middle of a dystopia at this moment. Have a great day, y'all.
Bye.